Hello. Hello, hello, hello. I am so happy to be on with you guys. Oh, gang, I am just feeling like I'm coming back to life. Do you know that feeling? Like, there she is. There she is again. Sometimes we have to spin those plates and we have to keep them all going. Sometimes we have to set some aside. You know what I'm saying? And then sometimes we can pick a few back up again. And I feel like I'm in that space of knowing which plates need to be spun, and that's making me feel more productive because I am able to stay focused on the things that are going to have the greatest impact to me, my family, those around me, those I serve, and the like. So this is your reminder that you may be in a season. That season will not be permanent. I can guarantee that. And I also know that if you lean in and you do the things that you know are going to get you to the other side, whether it be mental health, moving your body, eating the right foods, drinking water, leaning into God's word, whatever that might be, that when you get to the other side, you will have grown and learned. And that's the whole story, guys. That's this whole thing we called life. We will never have it figured out. We will never have everything running perfect ever. And even if we do, it'll be for a split second until we have a new lesson to learn. So lean in, know that it's all for a reason. It's all for a purpose. Nothing's happening to you. Everything's happening for you. What can you take from this moment? And I know some of you are going through some really hard stuff. And I'm not saying that flip it or lightly. I really want you to hold on, cling tight, and know that you will get to the other side. Okay. All right. So that's just such a great lead in to today's guest. My friend Elle came on and talked to me. You guys will get to hear us, giggle and chat and all that kind of stuff. And then we get into some really meaty stuff. She has quite the story. And as she shares in the episode, we haven't even heard all of it, but I really want to, I just kind of want to put a little disclaimer out there. We talk about mental health. That's really the biggest part of her story that she's sharing with us on this episode. And there's a lot that goes with that. And I just want to, I guess, put out a warning. This may not be for young ears because we talk about some pretty heavy duty stuff. And and if you have somebody who is struggling with mental health, or you yourself are going through a mental health crisis, or have issues in that area, we all have issues in that area, but if you need help, please, please, please reach out to somebody and get help, okay? All right, that's what the story is all about. She asked for help, she was brave, she was courageous, and she is now on a path to help others through a beautiful artwork of macrame. We'll talk about it. Her art is magnificent, and she's a beautiful, beautiful light. And what I'm grateful for is that she took her mess and she's making it her message, and she is paying it forward and helping others kind of find their way through this thing we call life. And with that, I give you my very good friend, Elle. Hello, and welcome to Spinning Plates Podcast. I am your host, Selena Johnson, and I am so glad you're here. God has a perfect plan for you, a design specific that is only for you, and I assure you that it does not include living tired and discontent. I know it's for you to live fully into who you're meant to be. So let's spin the plates together with joy and purpose. Thanks for hanging out with me. Hope you enjoyed today's episode. There's these people in your life that you meet and you instantly are like, have we been best friends for our entire lives? And this is one of those people, you guys, I get to introduce you to my friend, Elle, and she's amazing. You're going to see why just like throughout this whole conversation, but I'm really, really happy to have you here, Elle, on my podcast. Welcome.
I'm so happy to be here. Thank you.
Yeah. Oh my gosh. And people are going to start thinking that this is the deal. We're part of a community. You're all going to repeat it back to us now because you've heard me say it a million times, boss. But it's just so rich with women doing amazing things in our community. And so I'm just going to keep inviting people from this community because they're amazing people. And you are one of them. So you and I got to meet at, I don't even remember what event we met at. Do you remember?
Well, I can't remember if we met officially, like really talked at my first event, which was last spring, the tea party. Were you at that
No,
one?
I
Okay.
didn't get to go to it.
So I would say
So,
the one at Looking Glass
yeah. Okay.
Cafe would
That
be
makes
where we
yeah.
like sat together. We really
Yeah.
hit it off and we were like,
Yeah.
you turn to me and you're like, you're my people.
Yeah, I did because you were my people. You're my people. I love it.
Yeah.
Oh my gosh. So let's tell everyone a little bit about you and where you're at in life, and we'll get into like all the things you do because it's going to be so fun to talk about. I'm excited.
Oh gosh, where do I start? Well, I have been married to my husband for 14 years, together for 17. And we have two amazing boys. One is 15, almost 16, thinks he's like 25. And my youngest is 10.
Boy moms.
Um,
We're so, it might be part of why we're each other's people because we're in that space.
right? Well,
Mm-hmm.
and boy moms, it's just like I'm outnumbered in this house. And
Yeah.
so you've got to be more relaxed, which is a challenge, for me. So,
For both of us. Yeah.
right. But I've always been incredibly creative.
Mhm.
You name it, I've done it since I was little, all different art classes. I like to be busy with my hands and to just make things. Um, and I've also always struggled with my mental health.
Mhm.
So that brings me, all the way to where I am today, which is, how we met at the networking group and having my own business. Um, I hit like a breaking point with my mental health, and I think a lot of people struggled in 2020, obviously.
Why? That's weird.
Right? What happened then? But I mean, for me, it's been a long history since I was like 5 or 6, and I've always been able to kind of like when I've fallen down, I've gotten to be able to get back up, use something, and get my spirits back in a good place. And 2020, I just couldn't do that. Everything I was doing, all my efforts just wasn't there. And it got to the lowest, darkest place I've ever been. And that's been pretty low. And so it kind of scared me. And my husband and I made the decision that if I'm not good for myself and okay for myself, then I can't be for them. So we had to make the really hard decision, and I went to treatment during that time, which I mean, it couldn't be better. I was out of work and everybody was home, so it was a good time to do it. And that kind of opened the can of worms. Like people think you go to treatment and you go to get better. That's not the case. Anyways,
that's when you start stirring all the stuff up, and you're like,
it's like, surprise, here are all your issues laid out in front of you. But I mean, we can get more into that later. But that brought me, once I got home, I had learned tools. And one of those, when you're dysregulated, is to use a distraction. So I first started coloring like the mandala coloring books. And like, I mean, I colored one time like 15 hours straight. Like I gave myself a blister on my hand. It was so bad. I just like dove into it. And then I decided to pick up macrame. And that became my outlet. That became a place where I could come to peace. I could think about things. I could just be in my own world. And it was kind of soothing. It was like a therapy. Cut to my husband saying, you should make this a business and sell the pieces. I always joke that I think he just wanted to get them out of the house because it was like taking over.
There's probably a combo.
I mean, it hasn't gotten any better. Macrame is still everywhere. But so I went for it. And then the whole purpose behind it for me, and why I've called it Beyond the Knots, macrame for the soul, is where I'm happiest is the fact that I can connect with everybody. I'm a big empath. I want the best for everyone, and I'm really good at getting both sides of it and where they are and finding some way to relate and connect. And I want to help people because I think it's a projection, because I struggle so much that it's like, well, let's struggle together. Plus I don't follow my own advice, but I have great advice to give you. And so I wanted to turn this into a purpose for myself and to really put that out there of like, this is what macrame did for me. And this is the new perspective it did, which is looking beyond the knots. We all have knots in our lives. Some are big, some are little, some are tighter than others. And we all often try to untie them, untangle them, ignore them, do whatever we can to make them like not existent, which is ignoring our story. It's ignoring all the stuff that has happened to us. And if we can't accept that, we're never going to heal, and we're never going to be able to move on past that. But if you change your perspective and you put all those knots together instead of separate and make them a whole, and you kind of look past that, you can really find something beautiful from it. So my hope is to spread the mental health awareness, let people know that it's okay to not be okay, and also to let them know it's going to get better and we just need to accept things.
Yeah. Oh my God. Oh my gosh. Okay. Well, so you guys can see why I fell madly in love with her. I'm like, ooh, someone who talks real talk out of the gate. Like this is this is these are my people. Like let's like
It's a
cut through.
blessing and a curse.
Yeah, I know. I know. That's I understand. Sometimes you're like, ooh, not the audience. Okay. But no,
Right?
this yeah.
Read the
Um,
room, please.
yeah, read the room. Read the room. Um I'm obsessed with you. Okay, so let's talk about the mental health aspect because this is really, I mean, you guys, first of all, we're going to post all the things in the show notes. You guys can go look at her work. It is the most magnificent stuff. Like you do such beautiful work. And I think when you hear your story behind it, it's so obvious that your heart is so wrapped up. You're not just doing it to do it. You are doing it because it really is therapeutic for you. But I love that you're getting to love on other people with this thing that was a negative, right? Like when you did not see this coming. Like you said, when you went to treatment, it was a mess, right? Like it was a lot yeah. Yeah. I had a therapist once who said, because I when I went to therapy, I was like, oh, we should all be in it. Let's just be clear about that. Everyone should be talking to therapists every day. But
Right.
I went to a therapist and it felt so icky, the process of starting to dig things and talk. I don't really want to talk about it. I kind of want it to just feel better. And we have to like go through this whole thing. And he said he had this beautiful illustration where it's like, when you have like a glass with sediment in it, you can't just dump the water and then the sediment. Like you have to stir it up for all the particles to be able to be filtered out. And I'm like,
Mm-hmm.
look, so you went through the stirring up process.
Oh,
And
yeah.
I'm wondering at what point did you start to feel creative again? Like what did that look like? Because I think there's people who struggle and in the what's that process from falling apart to being able to kind of see past the knots and see them put together. So like what is that? It's a big question.
You know, I think the biggest thing and so much of what I talked about at the women's conference for Bloss and different things is I am not healed.
Mm.
I'm probably not even close to it. So I really want to remain authentic
Mm-hmm.
and not just come off here preachy like, hey guys, yeah, I went through this and now I'm all better and this is how it's going to be. Because I'm not there yet. And one of the things that I learned is recovery is not linear. You're
Mm-mm.
going to have your ups and your downs and it's going to get rough and then it's going to get good again. And that's also hard to accept because
Mm-hmm.
for me, it's like when things are going well, it's almost like a whole crash down as soon as something kind of happens that derails
Mm-hmm.
you. Um, I never lost the creativity aspect. I think that was always a constant to try to dive into
Yeah.
for the distraction purpose. And
Mm-hmm.
one of the things I live with every day is ADHD.
Yeah, I was
And
going to ask you if we could talk about like what some of your
yeah,
struggles are. Yeah.
I mean, I'm going to try to be as open and honest as possible. I think, again, like reading the room, there's a certain
Mm-hmm.
platform and a time. You got
Mm-hmm.
to really pick the people you trust
Mm-hmm.
that you want to share that stuff with.
Yes. So
And
important.
as much as I probably will love all your listeners,
Yes.
there's probably for my family's sake and myself, I
Yeah,
don't share.
absolutely.
But no, so one of the things is ADHD. And I think a lot of people, it's been more common now for them to use the term, oh, I've got ADD and I
Mm-hmm.
get distracted and I do that. And I mean, we all have the form of it. But I
Mm-hmm.
mean, ADHD also turns to behaviors and impulsivenesses. You get hyperactive.
Mm-hmm.
You can also get very focused on something, hence the macrame and the
Mm-hmm.
drawing. It's like when I'm in it,
Yeah.
I'm in it.
Fixated, right?
Yeah. So I've always been all over the place doing different things. Half projects always like half done.
Mm-hmm.
And but I'm a big out of the box thinker, very creative. It is a struggle with communication with my husband because he can be very black and white and simple. I'm all about details and indecisiveness.
Yeah.
Um,
The perfect marriage, as all
right.
marriages are, right?
Right? Oh yeah. But because I'm going to circle back around and there's the ADHD again of
We're
getting
here
off
for
topic.
it. If anyone who's had a whole conversation with me knows this is exactly how my conversations go. So you're totally safe.
Okay, I'm in good company.
Yeah, totally. My mom's like, finish the story, hun. Just finish the story. I'm like, but there's all these other thoughts that came up during the telling.
Right? It's just like banners going across, and all of a sudden I'm like, wait, what was I even talking about in the first place? How did I get here?
Exactly.
But I think what we started with was just like, what was it like and how did it go from being at that rock bottom
Right
to where I'm at today? And I was really frustrated because I was doing really well at treatment. I was there for 4 weeks and I was getting to a place where it was like, it was feeling okay, even though I had a lot of work to do. And then I got home and then that wasn't the case anymore. And what they don't prep you for or prepare you is when you're at treatment, you're in a bubble. And this wasn't a hospital. I wasn't hospitalized. This was it was a partial program. They were open from 8 to 5. So during that time I was in there doing all the work. And then I lived in a housing community that they offered as part of the treatment. So then after 5 o'clock, I'd go there with roommates and we'd spend the night. But we had freedom to walk around and do stuff. But you're in a bubble. You're in this community with everybody who might not necessarily be going through the same things as you, and everyone's story is different, but you all immediately connect and relate and you feel comfortable because these people get it and they're speaking the language that you're speaking there and they're using the tools that you've learned there. And then you get home and you're placed right back in the place that you were having a hard time with. So then things actually got worse again. I also had been put on a medication that I was informed of was not the one I had as a child, which had given me, there were really bad side effects, which were not good back then. So I ended up getting put back on that while I was at treatment. And, it takes a while for that to get in your system.
Right.
So once I was home, all hell broke loose again because of the medication. And it just was worse and worse. And then it has started to affect my husband and it was affecting me more and my kids, because now they were kind of, as much as I would try to control what I could, they were hearing things and there was constant yelling and fighting. And, I'm always going to have to live with the fact that I have brought trauma to my family, from the stuff that I've been going through. So it's been a long time coming. Once I started the macrame and I kept going, it just was starting to soothe me. And still to this day, I have pieces that are orders that I have to do, but I do my best to make sure I'm doing my own stuff as well.
Good.
And so when I get dysregulated, I do my best to go back to the macrame for what it was for me from the beginning. And I've shed tears while I'm having macrame. I have fought and argued while I'm doing macrame. I have done it with pure enjoyment and love. So I really put my heart and soul to everything that I make. And eventually I kind of sat there and it was like an epiphany. It was just like, because I couldn't get better. I was like, why? I'm doing all the work. I'm working so hard. I was going to therapy 3 times a week. I was doing support Zoom calls. I was practicing and utilizing all the tools I had. And it just wasn't good. And I realized I wasn't accepting what was going on and what had been. And you can't begin to heal if you haven't accepted and become aware of that. So I just kind of tied, to be punny, I tied it all together and put that perspective together about the knots.
Yeah. Well, thank you for being so vulnerable. I think that one of the things can make me cry, so I'm pausing. I don't burst into tears.
Don't worry. While I was talking about my kids, I had already started to. I had to
Well, that's what I want to
understand
come back to. So we might go there because that's what I want to come back to is, the other thing that you shown them is what it looks like to do the work and what it looks like um to not be perfect. And if there's something we can teach our children is that it is okay to not be okay. And there are going to be moments. I mean, we know looking forward, they're going to have relationships and struggles that we're not going to be in that room during that argument. And you're teaching them how to process and how to grow and how to keep moving forward. And I just think that's really beautiful. And I know that feeling of like, maybe not the same story as yours, but also the story of like, well, are they gonna, is this a core memory that I just created here? Like
Yeah.
this is
And to
something.
accept it and to have to accept that, like,
Yeah.
yeah, it is.
Yeah.
It was a really weird thing because so I mean, all of my struggles started when I was a child, and one of the things I learned is that sometimes things aren't people's fault. There's not
Mm.
necessarily anyone to blame. It just this
Mm.
is the circumstances, and then this is the effect that it had.
Yeah.
And so I love my parents till
Mm-hmm.
I could say that till I'm blue in the face. However, and it was a time period too back then where they didn't really know how to handle
They didn't
the
have
things
the
I was
tools.
going through. Yeah,
Yep.
they didn't have the tools, they didn't have
Yep.
the knowledge.
So cool.
Um, they came from their own family patterns of
Mm-hmm.
dysfunction and
Mm-hmm.
whatnot. And so unfortunately, because of that, it's created all, I mean,
Mm-hmm.
some of my, diagnosis that I do have are not necessarily from that, but a lot of it is affected that way.
Yeah. Yeah.
So I don't blame them, but I do need to acknowledge and need them to acknowledge and take accountability for what occurred.
Yeah. So often this is our story. This is what happened. This is what took place. All of us have that. Our background led us to today, right?
Exactly.
And but we get the choice today in how we move forward and how
Mm-hmm.
we maybe break cycles or do it different than what we witnessed or experienced, or just even like we get to choose. Like we get to choose how we do it with our kids and with our families. And I think that there's power in that, and knowing too that you're taking ownership of the process. I love that you said it's not necessarily anyone is to blame. Sometimes it's just the combination of,
Mm-hmm.
of histories and personalities, which we're
Yep.
born with. And, there's a lot that goes into it. And mental health is, it's a lot of, there's obviously a lot that weighs it, plays into it. There's obviously factors that led to things, but also there's, chemical imbalance
Yep.
within your body
Yep.
that's
So you
maybe
can't do
was
anything
there
about.
before. Right. And so I just think that it's so cool to see somebody like you who is moving forward and figuring it out and you have now come up with a tool that, I mean, the legacy that you're leaving with the macrame, I mean, your kids, I mean, that beauty has come out of this season for you. And I just think I just think it's beautiful, and I'm very
Thank
excited
you.
to watch it.
I appreciate that. It's with the kids, it's exactly what you said, breaking the patterns and
Mm-hmm.
undoing that cycle of,
Mm-hmm.
putting an interruption into the flow of things and being like,
Yeah.
let's revert this. And it's been a very weird experience because I have found myself over the last couple of years in these positions where I am completely understanding where my kids are coming from. But now, as a parent,
Oh.
and my mom also struggles with mental health, that I'm also in those shoes. And it's a very weird
Mm-hmm.
awareness. And then I
Mm-hmm.
don't really, and then it's kind of confusing to handle it. But,
Yeah.
it's really hard it's hard to parent your kids when I'm now having to parent myself.
Yeah. Yes,
And
it's real.
I really want to fight the stigma and that purpose and let the kids know and show that vulnerability is okay.
Yeah.
But it's still a struggle for me because as much as I don't have the stigma towards anybody else and I'm there for them, there's a bit of it with me still,
That's interesting.
which is bizarre. There's still
Yeah.
that nervousness of wanting to actually share all the things that I'm going through and went through and naming them and doing that, like, because I'm still worried I'm going to be judged, and
Right.
more than
And like
likely I
you
will
wouldn't,
be.
right. And you wouldn't judge other people but
Right.
you would judge yourself. Isn't that interesting? We're so hard on ourselves. Like,
So hard.
so
So,
hard on ourselves.
I mean, the feedback I get from I had a therapist for 2.5 years from after I came out, and I loved her. She ended up needing to move her practice. And so I couldn't be with her anymore. So I've been, playing the dating game. That's what it's like
Yeah,
by a
yeah.
therapist. And every time I talk to somebody, like the result is like, you are really hard on yourself. Because no matter what, even if somebody else was actually in the wrong, I still loop it back to like me
What did
doing
I
something.
do?
Yeah,
Right.
I
Yeah.
should change this. I should fix this. I'm a people pleaser,
Yeah.
100%, because
Yeah.
I'm scared of being rejected
Yeah.
for what I go through. And that's what happened to me growing up. So,
Yeah. Yeah. I told my son, he's a people pleaser too. And it's something that I am too, just for the record, everyone. I'm also a people pleaser. And it's something that I very intentionally I have to set boundaries with myself around, because I go there so quick, right? And
mhm.
it's been years of reminding myself that I'm not responsible for other people's feelings, and that I just get to do the best job I possibly can. And it, I'm never, ever, ever going to make everyone happy. So like, I have to just remove the process, the part where I'm trying to make anyone happy, because that's not my job. But I told my youngest, he leans towards it. And I feel like the greatest gift I can teach him is, you're not responsible for other people's feelings. And so when he starts to go there, I just stop, because, if I'm upset, he's like, what can I
Mhm.
do to help you? And I'm like, oh my gosh, no, I'm just upset. Like, you can't do anything, because I just need a
Is that
minute.
your youngest? Is that your youngest?
Yes.
That's
Gosh.
mine to a T. It's like he sees me upset and he'll come to me and he'll be like, do you want a hug?
Yes.
And it's just like, and he just hugs me, or he's like, mommy, I'm really sorry that you're having a hard time right now. And
Yeah.
that kind of thing breaks my heart though, because I'm like, it's not your job to fix it. Like
Right.
I appreciate it. And he'll even preach back to me things that I have said to him,
Love
which
it.
makes me really proud in those
Yes.
moments.
Yep.
But again, that shame comes in, because I'm like, at the time, my 7-year old, my 8-year
Mhm.
old shouldn't have to be saying this to
Mhm.
me right now. But
Mhm. Yeah, and I also think, though, gosh, how cool is it? I mean, I don't know that I had anyone say to me, you're not responsible for other people's feelings, when I was younger. That wasn't really the narrative. So I had a very loving family, and they didn't see that in me, that I was literally struggling with, like, how can I make everyone happy, right?
right,
And I want that for our children, for them to know that, yeah, we aren't always going to have rainbows and sunshine. Like, so you can't automatically try to fix it for everyone, because it's just, and also some people just need a minute to be upset. Like, that's also
right,
true, right? That's
yeah.
a big part of it. Like, just give people a minute, and they're okay. And gosh, it's hard to sit in those feelings, though. That is like,
It's so hard. I mean,
the
one of the things they
worst.
talk about is like, just ride the wave. Like that's how the feeling comes in. And or
Yes.
like it can't, like, open the front door for the feeling, let it come through the house, and open the back door and let it out. Like
Yes.
that is so like easier said than done. I mean, it's so
Yes.
complicated. And when you're already dysregulated or
Yeah.
in that feeling, to
Yeah.
then be able to do it is
Yeah.
like,
Yeah. Yeah.
what do
You
you want
almost
from
have,
me?
yeah, it's almost like you have to have something. Well, like yours is macrame, but you have to have something that kind of snaps you out of it, right? That can be like, I'm doing it again, doing it again.
So something is that's unfortunate is, a lot of the times that comes down to my husband needing to kind of give me that reality check, and then he will walk on eggshells hoping that I'm not going to be upset when he calls that out, that I can
Yeah.
actually accept and then fix, and
Yes.
not just kind of go on a tangent. And
Yeah.
when I'm in the thick of it, because I also have a mood disorder.
Okay.
So that makes everyday life very challenging. I mean, somebody whose mood levels, here on a median, well, mine naturally is 10 steps below. I have to go up to get to you. And then it can change throughout the days too. And so when I am so dysregulated and in a place, I can tend to disassociate. So it's
Hmm.
like, I'm that freight train, and the brakes are out, and I'm just going, and I'm watching the whole thing go down, and yet I can't do anything about it.
Yep. You
And
can't
so
snap back into place.
Yeah. So one of the skills we learned at the treatment facility was it's called DBT. It's dialectical behavior therapy.
Mm-hmm.
And it's broken up into sections. You have, your wise mind. It talks about interpersonal relationships, emotion regulation, radical acceptance, all these things in different areas. Well, one of the things with emotion regulation is when you are to a whole nother level, to snap out of it, there's different tools, one of which is called it's the diver response is what they call it. I don't know
Mm-hmm.
if you've ever heard of that, but
Mm.
you what they typically say is you take a big bowl of freezing cold water filled with ice
Oh boy.
and you stick your face in that for they say for like 15 to 20 seconds, as
But it's
long as you
like to
really do.
literally snap you out of it.
It's
Yeah.
literally to snap. It puts a shock into your body, and then
Yeah.
it changes things. Now a lot of people don't like that, so there's other forms, and depending on where you are, you can get cold paper towel and put it on your face. Mine
Mm-hmm.
is an ice pack.
Yeah.
So I never want to do it when I'm in those moments. So often my husband will have to go to the freezer and grab the ice pack and kind of bring it to me, which has become
Oh.
harder for him
Yeah.
because we respond to things. So if
Yes, and we're
he's
like,
getting
what are
yelled
you
at,
trying to say? I don't need an ice
yeah,
pack.
or he now needs to snap out of his frustration to go get something to help me, like
Yes.
that's got to be hard
Oh
for him. My heart goes out.
gosh.
He's a trooper.
Like we're so tangled, life. It's just so layered and complicated. And I think that it's very inevitable, I guess, that I mean you have very obviously diagnosis but I mean all of us are dealing with those things in our house where we've got
Yes.
triggers and people and personalities and so I think it's so powerful to have anything to help, my whole thing is pause, right? Like, but
Yep.
anything to like get you out of the moment. And so what are some of the other tools that you have to even just step away yourself and to pause, as it were?
So a big thing for me has become like distraction. The category of distraction is like where
Mm-hmm.
it's at for me.
Mm-hmm.
So music is a big
Good.
one, and quotes. So Pinterest is my love, and I'll just go through and I'll read all the quotes, and it's like they're my words without being my words, like ones I can't come
Yes.
to and articulate. So whether they're sad and they're just truthful or they're, optimistic,
Mm-hmm.
that's kind of something that helps me along with music. And it's especially music that the lyrics fit where I'm at.
Mm-hmm.
Not in a negative way, because if you're
Mm-hmm.
really sad and depressed, you don't want to listen to sad and depressed music, right?
Yeah.
But it's good music that
Yeah.
still connects to what it is that I'm
Real.
possibly going through, if that makes
Mm-hmm.
sense.
Yeah.
Um,
I'm gonna need your
Another big one is
playlist.
grounding. Oh, yeah, I have a lot. There's one that I have is called There's Always Tomorrow. So that's
Mm,
like, that's what I named because it's like, all right, look, today sucks.
I
But
love
you've
that.
got you've got tomorrow. So
Yeah.
another one's grounding, going
Mm.
outside.
Yep.
And I even try to do it depending on the weather, barefoot,
Mm-hmm.
because like there's literally something with like touching the ground and connecting to the like roots
I
that
agree.
does ground you.
Yeah. Mine's literally fresh air. Like,
Mhm.
yeah, especially like if I'm, in like stressed at work or, the kids and we're all inside and I just like will like just walk outside and like take 5 deep breaths because there's something about getting clean oxygen to your brain and like,
Yeah.
I mean, I know you probably know the same I do. When you go for a walk for 5 minutes, you're like, oh my gosh, this is exactly, I just needed to move my body and be in a
Right.
different place and not have people talking to me for for a minute and whatever.
There's just something about outside,
Yeah,
like just
nature.
being outside that can make all that difference. And breathing, like you said, is another one. I try to do like that four square breathing or the
Yeah.
other different methods. I can't ever get it like that, but like literally breathing in general, because
Yeah.
when I tend to get very upset, I hold my
Mhm.
breath.
Oh, isn't that interesting?
Yeah, it's because I think when I've like tried to really look and analyze it, if I breathe and I let the air out, everything I'm going through is going to come out.
Oh
Does
gosh.
that make sense? It's
Yeah.
like a release, but it doesn't feel good.
You're
Like it
not
doesn't,
ready to release it. You're like,
yeah.
I need to
So it's just like
process
that
this.
hold on, and I just hold my breath. I mean, gosh, I got quite the capacity now to be able to do that. My husband's like, breathe,
Can you take a deep breath? Yeah.
please.
Well, I think that I love hearing your story, and I don't, not that I want to go, we don't have to go deep into detail, but I'd love to hear from you what you would, I guess you would, advice you would give to somebody who might be feeling like they're falling apart. And how did you get to the point of really getting help, and what did that look like? And is there just advice on how to talk it out with someone?
That's really hard. Like, I think to answer that, my advice is very, it depends. It depends on who it is I'm talking to, what they've shared with me, and what it is that they're going through. I say that I like to dabble in a little bit of everything. I mean, I've got quite the list of things that I'm working on right now. And, besides the mood disorder and ADHD, I've actually been told that I have perfectionism, like it's a real thing.
Mm-hmm.
And so that makes things difficult. I also dealt with, for a while back, substance abuse type
Mm-hmm.
things.
Mm-hmm.
I thought if they're bad coping mechanisms, and I've had to find the new ones. So that, there's that level of things. The mood disorder. I mean, the list goes on of the things that I deal with. I have severe anxiety, all those things. So depending on what each person has that would come to me, there's different ways that I can relate. For me, I mean, I've always known that I've had trouble, so I've been fighting this all my life.
Kind of came to a head for you, like you're like, I can't.
Yeah, like there's these back and forths, and like looking back now at things and more that I've discovered, I can look back at moments in my past and be like, ooh, that makes sense now. Some of that, I could be in hypomanic stages, and I look back and I'm like, oh, those 2 years was amazing. That was success. That was great. I was productive. I was functioning great. And I'm like, no, that probably was this on top of bad coping mechanisms. I was just surviving.
It happened to be working out during that season.
Yeah, right? I was just surviving. And then I would do things like my weight has fluctuated like crazy. One of the things I will share is, I am still battling an eating disorder that came about, well, I mean, 13 years ago now. And so, see, now I'm like, where was I going with that? Oh, so my weight like has fluctuated. And so working out was a big thing for me, but I would end up taking that too far. But like if I was in a funk, it was like, okay, well, let's go work out. But then I would get sucked into that.
Fixated on it and focused.
Yeah. All those different areas. And so it finally came to that point in 2020 where everything I usually do that gets me functioning again wasn't working.
Yeah.
And I've dealt with it in my life. People who have unfortunately been in such horrible places that they have committed suicide. And I, however, have always, like, I could understand where people get to because I have felt certain ways, but I've always looked at it as a selfish act. I've always looked at it as like, okay, yeah, you want it to end. Yes, you think that it's going to be better for everybody, but you're leaving them all. You're not there to pick up all the pieces that were left behind. I was having a hard day, and I was talking with my husband, and I had to get upstairs because the water was boiling, and I was making mac and cheese for the kiddos. It's funny how things just really stick out to you. And I'm sitting there and I'm in tears because of our conversation, and I'm just stirring the noodles, and I sit there and I'm like, it's not selfish, it's selfless. And that really scared me.
Yeah.
Because I'd never been there. I had never thought that. And the fact that I went there to just the thought of it scared me to the point of like, where could this go then? And I was thankfully able to recognize that. And so I spoke up and I told my husband, and that's where those conversations started about, getting help. The biggest thing is you have to start with the awareness of something, and you have to then want it. I could go to therapy all day long and sit there and waste that hour of time and my money because I don't want to talk about it, or I'm going to beat around the bush. I always thought that I was a very open and honest person, and that I would share things and connect on deep levels. And when I was in treatment, I realized that is not the case. I remained
Right.
surface. I did
Right.
not, I listened to them. I asked the questions. I was always there for them. But that also was a distraction for
Yeah.
them so
Yeah.
that I didn't have to touch base on my stuff, you
Yeah.
know?
Yeah.
So you need to have the awareness and you have to have the desire to sit there and be like, something's got to change.
Yeah. I think that the honesty with yourself, I mean, I know for me too, like when if I, yeah, like you said, beating around the bush and not really getting to the point, then I'm not going to actually solve the problem. I'm just going to keep
Right.
rolling it around. And what it sounds like is that you were able to finally be honest, like this is not okay. This is not going to get better on its own, right? Because we also do
Yeah.
that where we think like it's going to just heal itself and it
Yeah.
doesn't.
It doesn't. It really doesn't. And it's hard. I think it was like a month ago, I was in a low place and it was like, part of me was like, why did I even do this? Like, I've made life worse now from going and getting help, because then it did make things aware, which then created more problems because they had to,
Right.
now I'm grieving it, or now I'm realizing it and going through it. And in return, it's having effects on the rest of my family in a non-positive way. So
Mhm.
it's like, why did I even do that? I shouldn't have
Right.
said anything.
Right. I could have just hit it for years and years and,
It's what I've
whatever.
been doing. I mean,
Yep.
it's like so
Hmm.
much of my husband was like, he had a hard time in the beginning not being upset with me.
Yeah.
Because he felt like a lot of it was like I kept from him, or I lied about. And it's like, that's never the intention. You don't, but when is a good time to tell somebody all this horrible stuff,
Yeah.
or
I'm a
like what?
complete mess.
Hey, we're in a great mood. Let me tell you all of this
Yeah.
awful, awful
Yeah.
stuff.
Yeah.
Um,
Let me share with you my deep, dark thoughts that are
yeah,
not
it's
okay. Yeah.
like you just can't. It's so hard to do as much as you want to. With, like, I brought up the conference before, and being a speaker there, it was like, I'm going to do it. This is going to be my time. This is my platform. This is 100% what my business is supposed to be like. And I preach and I'm vulnerable and authentic and I'm going to tell them all of it.
Yeah.
I didn't do that fully. I didn't
Yeah.
do that in what my plan was. There was definitely, I held back a bit more than I thought I was going to. And I guess I just, instead of being hard on myself for it, I have to just say, okay, well, you just weren't ready.
Yeah. Well,
Or,
now they can listen to this and they can.
yes. And they still won't get it all. I'm just
I
going to keep
know.
you guys coming back for more. It's like those cliffhangers. You'll learn more the next time.
They're teasers, little teasers.
Yes.
Oh
I'm a
my gosh.
complicated person.
Well, we'll have to just like, I don't know, be around you for years and years and just keep getting more and more information from you on how to,
I mean, have you done
navigate.
part twos and part
Yeah,
threes for your
sure. We
podcast?
can do it. Let's do it. Let's totally do it. I love it. Oh my gosh. Love you.
I love you.
I love you so much. And I'm so glad that you shared, because the bottom line is that you're not the only one suffering with one or all of what you've described, and you're not alone. And I think that there's somebody out there right now listening that doesn't hasn't been able to articulate or put it into words, and you've given so much good information of just what it feels like, what it looks like, what the results are. And I just yeah, I just know that it's we're not just listening to like a fluffy story, we're listening to something that's going to maybe help somebody else get help. So yeah, I'm really glad that you were here and sharing and all of
I
that.
appreciate that. And it's so, like, literally everybody is going through
Mm-hmm.
something. Like, you
Mm-hmm.
don't know what it is. And somebody's hard stuff might not be hard for you, but that's
Yeah.
their hard stuff. And
Yeah,
we
absolutely.
should never judge what somebody's going through. Just the bottom line is they're going through it.
Yeah. Yeah.
And that's my whole purpose, is if I can just touch one person for
Yeah.
one post or one conversation or one macrame piece, that's what fills me up. That fills my cup. It's macrame for the soul, I say. I just posted something yesterday, a quote and a comment from somebody I don't know,
Mhm.
said, I really needed to hear this today, thank
Yeah.
you. And it's like
So
that kind of thing right there is like, that's why I'm doing this.
I know, and you're being so brave. You're okay, so everyone needs to follow you. How are they gonna follow you? Where should we find you?
So I'm getting everything still fully set up, but right now you can find me on Instagram. That's where I'm most active, but that all links to my Facebook page too.
Mm-hmm.
So it's Beyond the Knots, but there is an underscore before and
Mm-hmm.
after.
Okay.
Um,
And we'll
for
put
them
that
to
in
find.
the notes. And everyone should watch your stories and hang out with you because you are very vulnerable in your stories and it brings me joy. I'm always like, what are we going to talk about today? Like it's not just like, silly stuff. It's like real talk. And so don't stop doing that, okay? Like people
Well, the
need
feeling's mutual. I live
that.
for your I don't watch it at 5:30 in the morning, but I live for your 5:30 in the morning stories, singing in your kitchen with all the best songs. I'm like, I just want to be her when I grow up.
Oh, stop it. Stop it. You can dance in your kitchen too. Okay, so we're gonna put in the show notes where to get a hold of you, and then I have some fun questions for us to wrap up.
Bring it on.
Okay, what are you feeding your mind with right now?
Well, to be fully honest, right now I've been really listening to your podcast
Oh,
and the Market Mavens podcast.
I know. Sarah, she was
So
on our podcast. Did you get to hear her? Yeah,
yes,
that's
I
right.
did get to hear hers. I did a little research and listened to a bunch of older episodes that I hadn't gotten to yet and stuff.
I
And
love
and so
it.
I was listening to hers. I'm not a big book reader. The last time I did read one, I mean, it was maybe, a few months ago, but there are a lot of self-help. I love Brene Brown,
Oh.
and that kind of thing. But music and the podcast so far.
I think that's when I said you're my people is when you and I were talking about Brene Brown the first night we met. I was like,
Yes.
okay.
You're like, yes, all right.
Yes, she's
I
my
think
people.
I brought out one of her quotes or something, and I'm like, that's from Brene Brown, Brene Brown. And you're like,
It was
yes,
very
I know.
I know. Okay, what brings you joy?
You and Fit for Joy. No,
Oh.
you do. You really do. It's like we were saying, you light up a room. I got to tell you. I would say, as corny as it may sound, I think most moms would agree. Watching my kids have fun, like when they literally have that genuine smile or laugh, it just is such a good feeling, especially when they're doing it together. Yes. Because I mean, they have 5.5 years apart, and my oldest is in that 16-year-old
cool
moody stage,
right?
Yeah. But when they get the giggles, it is like literally the best sound. So
it is the best sound. My oldest this week, we're coming back from youth group, and it was just, do you ever like to have I'm sure you do, you have those moments where you're kind of almost just out of body, just like observing your child, you know what I mean? Like, I'm just like listening. And he was like talking my ear off, which, first of all, anytime I can get him to talk my ear off, I'm like, say more words, like tell me everything.
Give me more.
Tell me more. And he was talking about, I can't even in this moment tell you what it was, because I don't even remember what it was, but it was something he was super passionate about. He was super excited about. He was like inside jokes, laughing with himself while he's telling me. And I was just like watching him, and I'm like, yes, oh, good. Yeah. Keep doing this. Like, go after those things that bring you that joy. And
well, they hit a point, and it's like, as a parent, like, I mean, we see our kids every day, so it's like you don't see the growth, and then sometimes it'll hit you. But there gets to be a point when they really start to become their own, like their character really comes out more. And like, I remember that with my oldest, we were sitting at the dinner table, and the conversation he was having and the perspective, and he was keeping up with us adults. It was just like, whoa, wait a minute. And then he got older, and his sense of humor came out of like, and him and I are very relatable on that I was like, when you're not mean and grumpy, I love being around you. Like, I genuinely want him as a friend. Like, he is one cool dude,
Oh, I love that.
Both my kids are. But
that is so cool. I know that. So what's your favorite way to recharge?
My happy place is the ocean. I'll take any ocean, but I prefer it to be warm and sunny and nice sand. But just sitting out there, I mean, literally it's like, as a mom with an infant, you can just stare at your baby all day. I can literally just stare out into the abyss and enjoy the waves in the air. And that's my recharge 100%. And then it's even better if there's a sunset involved. Sunsets and sunrises, I'm a chaser of those. And The beautiful thing is when the sun sets, it still rises the next day. So
I love that. What's a favorite piece of advice you've been given or give?
okay, that's a hard one.
I know. I asked the question, but I don't even know if I can answer it. Every time I guess I'm looking for somebody to give me my answer because
Maybe. I mean, there's often so many that it's like, well, how can I remember them all? A lot of them are newer because this journey that I've been going through, that's where things have really made the difference and have helped me function. And, you know, one of those things is what we've talked about is the vulnerability.
Yeah.
We all, it's the shared human experience that we are wired for connection. And I mean, I feed off that. I need the constant connection, but you can't really have it without vulnerability. And that's what I've learned, where I thought that I was really vulnerable and shared, it was all just surface. So that was a big piece of advice, and I'm still trying to execute that. Not the one that is hard for me in the moments to remember is when somebody told me that not everyone has the same capacity or tolerance as you do, especially emotionally. So just because I may be able to sit here and go deep, or to actually care and empathize and listen to you, or to be able to sit in the darkness in the hard moments, or whatever it could be, not everybody else can do that. And that doesn't mean they don't want to, because it's hard for me not to internalize that. It's just that they literally.
Yeah, I think that it also depends on the day and the person and the capacity they have in that moment too. So all of it, like, you kind of remember, like, oh, maybe next week they'll have capacity for this, but to not put that I guess that's it, right? Not putting the expectation on everyone else to be exactly where you're at.
Yeah, it's a projection.
Yes.
I'm projecting what I want and do for people. And when I don't get it in return, it's like I'm offended. And that's not going to get me anywhere in life. Like, that's going to be a constant struggle. Because I feel like if they don't do something, then they must not care, because I would do that. But it's just, maybe that isn't how they think. And so they need to be told that, or maybe they just aren't able to do that. Like, it's a thing. I mean, sometimes like marriage or any relationship is not 50-50. Sometimes I can only give 20. So my husband's got to take on 80, it's like, those different
I heard
areas.
something the other day. I think it was Mel Robbins was sharing their evening check-in. Her and her husband's evening check-in when they see each other after a day, is their check-in is to say how much they have to give. Like, I've got about 20% to give, and then her husband will be like, I have 50% to give, and it's like that, like, helps them know, like, oh, we're already in a place of depletion, or like, I'm feeling really good, so we can have long conversations and talk about things, but maybe not. So
something what we do is I started it, and it's spoons. So it's like, I only have so many spoons for the day, and our things stack, right? So it's like, this took 1 spoon, but now this took 5 spoons. So it's like, he'll come in. I try to get him to do it for me, because he's hard to read sometimes. He holds it in. But he'll either ask me, or I'll just let him know, and I'll be like, I'm down to nothing. I got like 0
use all my spoons today.
Or I've got 5 spoons, but they're small ones. Like, just so he can kind of gauge, because it's okay to be grumpy. Like, I've told my kids, like, you can be upset and not know why, but at the same time, you can't necessarily take it out on us, especially if I don't know. Like, let me know you're having a hard time, and I will act accordingly, like, around that. You know what I mean? I'm not going to cater to you, but I'm going to be aware.
Yeah, I think that we that's probably like the number one thing my husband and I have worked on, is like just communicating on where we're at, because and also marriage to me is like just removing expectations. Like, just drop them, like, because it is, two totally different people, and they're trying to fit, and just, he's not gonna do exactly the way I would think you know what I mean? And
Right.
there's so much more grace for each other when we're like, okay, I don't actually, it would be great if we could do this, but it doesn't mean I have expectations. Anyways, it's been probably mostly just takes the weight off of me, of feeling frustrated, right? It's not,
Right.
and he still steps up
No.
just like he normally would. I just didn't, I had an expectation over here, and now I'm like, oh, that's nice.
Right. Well, cool. Okay.
What a
That's
great
what
surprise. Okay.
I will
So,
say that I will say the other thing that was on
mhm,
there, that I'm aware of, it's been advised to me, and I'm working really hard at, like, I want it, but I can't do it yet, is the shame.
mm,
Not having shame. Like, I mean, on all aspects, it always comes down to a shame spiral for me. And the only way to fight shame is with compassion. And so if I'm ashamed with when it comes to myself, then I've got to do that self-compassion. And that's a
yeah,
really hard thing for me to
yeah,
do. But it's amazing advice, because when I am able to do it, it works.
yeah. Yeah. Have you read Brene's, this podcast episode is sponsored by Brene Brown, just in case anyone's wondering. Uh,
Shout out to Brene.
yeah,
We're on a
shout out to
first name basis.
Brene. Oh gosh, can you imagine if I could ever get her on?
That would be
Uh,
amazing.
oh my, I would lose my mind. There's a book she wrote. I have it. Next time I see you, I'm going to give it to you. So good. If you
What's
haven't,
it called?
Imperfect.
I have the book called The Gifts of Imperfection.
Okay, that's it. That's the
Yep.
one. It's so good for this.
Oh my gosh, it's my favorite. I love the book. It's
Of
sometimes
course,
hard for me
everyone
to
read it.
read because it makes me cry, because I
Yes.
realize I do these things to myself, or that kind of thing. But
Yeah.
no, it's an amazing book.
She's so good at breaking it down, and making it digestible, and
Yes.
then giving you tools to help you over, like you just said, compassion, like they can't coexist. So,
Right.
helping you with those tools. But yeah, I read it. I hadn't picked it up till this year, and I was like, where's this book been my entire life? Like this
Right.
is
Well, what I love about Brene Brown's books is like, I guess you could put them in, I don't know if they actually are, but you could put them in the category of self-help books.
right.
But it's not like you're reading a self-help book.
Right.
Does
No,
that, like,
it's so, yeah,
you
it's
know,
so
the
relatable. And
way she breaks it down, and I mean, I've seen her TED Talks and stuff, so I can, like, hear her voice and I can read it the
yes,
way she talks, but like,
yes,
it it doesn't just make it digestible, it makes it receivable.
yeah,
Because, like, I can read and I can hear it and I can digest it, but it doesn't necessarily hit home.
yeah,
And hers can hit home without me wanting to invalidate.
yeah. And it's said with it, that's exactly, it's said in such a way where it does validate where you are. Like you
Yeah.
don't feel alone when you get done hearing it. You're like, oh, that's like a real thing that people feel. Like, cause I
Yeah.
didn't know, I thought it was just me. That's just so exciting.
Yeah, absolutely. She touches those things right there where it's like
Yeah.
something you wouldn't necessarily bring up. And so you
Yep.
think you're alone in it. And
Yeah. Gosh, I love that. What's a product you can't live without? I can't wait.
oh my gosh. Um, well, I'm indecisive.
You
I
give me all of
feel
them.
I feel like I should say a lint roller, because my dog's
Oh,
hair, it is absolutely ridiculous. I mean, it's gotten to the point where it's like weaved into our clothes. I can vacuum and 2 minutes later it's everywhere again. So I'm not kidding. So, like, I have it in my bathroom, I have it in the bedroom, I have one in my car.
love
I
that
tell
answer.
my kids every time they get in the car, and they all love black, that I'm like, dude, you need the lint roller. Like, so I would definitely say that would be one.
Okay, I
But
love it.
one fit product I've been using for, gosh, maybe 20 something years, and I'm so happy they still keep it, is Fast Food. It's a leave-in conditioner by AG Care. And
Okay.
it smells amazing. Why it's called Fast Food,
Yeah.
I don't know. Um,
I
but you know
love
when
it.
you're getting your hair done and they use those products and your hair smells so good and you're like, what is that?
Yes.
That day I was like, that's amazing. And I bought it that day, and every time it's out, I refill it.
Okay. I'm in. I'm gonna need you to send me any information on how to get a hold of that.
Done.
Okay. I love it. Oh my gosh. This was exactly what I knew it would be, which was just absolutely perfect. And
Why, thank you.
so happy to be your friend. I'm so excited to be on the journey with you. And when I see you post and you share your pieces and all that, I have this very weird, like nurturing pride for you. It's very much like, look what she's doing. Look at what she's doing. You guys, her pieces are amazing, but like, I just know the heart that went into them, each of them. And you're at Salish Lodge now,
I'm
and
so excited. And Lamb and Co. I've got pieces
Lamb
in
and
their
Co.
storefront. I'm
So
like,
huge.
things are happening. Like
Yeah.
it's coming together. And I will just say in return, you feel that pride, and I do as well when you hit new milestones. But I also look at it as this opposite of like a mentor and somebody that I really look up to. So I'm incredibly grateful and thankful that you have bounced on into my life
Me too.
scene.
Me
It's
too.
amazing.
I know, even for recording, you're so cute because you're like, let's be together, or can we be together? So we didn't, you guys were on Zoom, but we're gonna be together. We're gonna go figure out how to finally
Yeah,
get
you
coffee.
better make that happen.
Yes, we're gonna do it. Oh, I'm so glad you were here, and thanks for being on.
Thank you, my dear.
Thank you for listening. I'm just so grateful that you would take the time to be here with me today. I hope that if there's anything that inspired you or got you excited, that you would share it to social media or send me a message with any input or feedback that you have. And just really appreciate the support and the encouragement that I get from you guys all the time. I will keep showing up, and I hope you keep listening.